Hi there, here, you beautiful people at the Develop Brighton. So today, I'm talking about our game a bit, the pipeline, about the production of Farming Simulator. So let me ask you first, who of you knows Farming Simulator? Just, raise your hand. Keep them up. And who played it? It's still a lot. Thank you. So the rest is probably just here, like the audience who wants to get to know something about what I'd like to talk about today. So this is also good because we're not playing the game. At first, please, let me introduce us as a company, and here, the beautiful younger me, myself. So I studied mechanical engineering, which is nothing you should do when you're going in software development. This is why I was a career changer who went to our company as a head of support. Quite after 1 year, you see that we established our internal QA, and with me as a QA lead. And right after, I went into our hardware development. Like, we created again a new department, and we're now prototyping more or less like gadgets for example, our collector's edition, which is my job nowadays. But since I did QA in the past, I'd like to talk about our production. We, as Giant Software, we're not software developers in a whole. We're like more or less doing simulations. We're working close together with agricultural companies. We're having like simulators for real machinery that is sold later to like the consumers. Since 2020, we're doing publishing. We have a whole fleet of marketing guys, for example, the video production team, our pixel arts, and so on. So also the community, And we're doing our own events on different, for example, the conference here, we're like having a talk, and we're also doing events on the Gamescom in Cologne next month. For example, we're showing our esports section. If you're interested in that, it's called the Farming Simulator League. Sorry, I was just checking about the microphone, so probably I should speak in here, right? Sorry, guys. So we have four offices. So the main headquarters located in Zurich that hosts our engine team and also our map artists. In Erlangen, we have a second branch office that inhabits our scripters, our integrators, the QA, I was in before, the marketing, and also our publishing, which brings us to the Brno office, which is in the Czech Republic, where the 3D artists are working. They're like doing our vehicles, our characters, etc. You know the deal. And also in Chicago, because we want to give 24/7 community and like email support, so that people in a different time zone get their answers quickly. And yes, what are we doing? We're doing the farming simulator series since already 2008. It's like we have over 15 titles released since then, and on all the platforms, PC, Mac, the consoles, you name it. So also on mobile, but it's a different version at the moment. So maybe we're coming together in the future. So this is why you're here. We're talking about these 4 topics today. It's what happens in pre-production, what departments are working on the production itself for our farming simulator, and how crossplay affected our latest version of the game, and what solutions we had to challenge our problems we had. And in the end, I'm talking a bit about our modding and user-generated content. So let's start with the first topic, the pre-production. That means having ideas, having meetings, giving feedback, and so on, like doing analysis. So what we usually do is having FSNext meetings. We ask ourselves questions like, what has to be in the next game? What do we want to see? What does the community want? What does our manufacturers, like our partners, want to see in the game, their latest versions of their machinery? So what we do is, for example, doing proof of concepts for new features in our research and development department, so that we have to scope our the requirements that needs to be added in our engine itself, so that we have later like something in our game. What we do is we're using our own internal planner tool, and we simply call it the planner. It's very creative. But as you know, like in planning, you have like this hierarchical levels. For example, we have the latest game, like we called it, like let's call it FS Next, and we define our scopes. For example, we can add content in there, like which DLCs do we want to see? I heard like payment models like are not that whatever. We'd like to, we have to have DLCs in there. We see the models that are needed. We see who has to do what, like who is like the manager, let's say, for a specific creation, and who is assigned to that task, who is the person you can contact. So a bunch more. Everything is more or less listed in that tool. So everything in there ties heavily into our production. So everything, like you heard, that is planned will be in that planner. So here you see, for example, a specific DLC in it on its own. We have everything like as steps in there. So, for example, is the CAD file ready? Is the model ready? You can see this planner as an ever-growing design document, so that these concepts that we had before, like in our meetings, that they at somehow in the future will be like a reality. So there you can also set, like for us, we will set there like our milestones. From that pre-production, we go to that to the next topic, the production. We see how our departments work inside our company, close together, and what they do in what order. So again, we're starting with the engine team that's located in Zurich. They're creating our in-house engine. The reason for that is that we're not using like an already existing engine, is that we don't want to have dependencies on other developers, that we don't want to have middleware in between, that we have to wait for something like a new feature to be in specific in that engine. And then we only use like open source libraries because we want that to be in full control. This is why we use that engine. Usually, our engine programmers, they are the first that work on new features. They like have to prepare the engine so that the other departments can work on functions that will be included later on. For example, our map artists. So they are like also working at the same time on the new map, for example. We have, let's say, the idea, the FS Next meeting came to the conclusion we need to have an US map because our players like are mostly from the US, and they want to have something they're like, well, they know already. So our map artists have to have a look at like a common region in that area and have to check how it looks, take references, and they're now going to see which new features we planned already in meetings, and they have to add it to the map. So for example, is there specific, like here on the picture, building that needs to be built over time. So the players the opportunity to like bring wood or whatever to the specific location, and over time the map will change. Like I think EA called it Levolution back in the days. So what they do is they're also creating like these points of interest, and they're using whiteboxing for it. So while doing this, you already have the possibility to check if the map itself is working for the player. And for that, you should already include the QA department, like right in the beginning of that creation phase. So we already have these milestones in the planner. And since the mappers, they don't usually test the map itself, they're being this artist. Everything they do, they're like, this is good what I did. You don't have to tell me what I have to do, that I have to do it differently. Then they, for example, they would listen to the QA, and so if the QA is already testing that map, they're able to like come to a conclusion and find best perspective for the player itself after all. So they will have fun, that the layout is practical and so on. Afterwards, there's like, this is more or less what I already talked about. So for example, in this case, the artists are creating our vehicles or the tools, like they're attached to that vehicles, the tractors, the machinery. And after the model is finished by them, the QA will have a look at it, and also the integrators will start working on integrating the machinery into our game, like regarding the animations and so on. But they're constantly giving feedback, not only the QA, also the integrators. And once the integrators are done, the QAs work checking their machinery also if there are like any bugs. So this is, if you're able to use the QA right up in the beginning, you're getting a lot of feedback and you're having an easier way, easier outcome in the end. What I was already talking about, the production of our assets, like in this case the vehicles. Our vehicle creators, like the asset creators, the artists, they're not only creating the vehicles, they're creating like the buildings, the objects, the animals, the NPCs, and so on. But regarding our case, it's not that easy for them in order to fill the player's view of our game, since the player itself, he wants to have like, it's real machinery, it's not fictional. They want to have like the perfect proportions. They want to have machines that look like the original one they probably know from the neighbor, or they have at their own farm, whatsoever. So wherever you get to know that machinery. And therefore we use CAD files for the references. We use a lot of photographs, and if CAD files are not available, we even go out with a laser scanner in order to do like a point cloud of it, so that the proportions at least will fit. Because I know that artists, maybe if the angle is wrong of that photograph, then the artist will have like a different shape, for example, of the hood. And the hood itself wouldn't be like the real one. And so the player in the end would be annoyed by even that. Going from the asset creation, we're talking about the integration. This means the integrators, they're splitting our mod or the 3D asset into different modular elements. For example, here, what's marked is the fender. It's able to move to steer within with the steering wheels, and also like hydraulics, you name it, doors, everything needs to be animated. Even materials are assigned in this case, in this stage, and sometimes scripts for additional gameplay elements. For example, in our last DLC add-on, which was a forestry map, we added a yarder that was able to put steel ropes through the wood, and you were able to use them in order to transport logs from one to each other. This was done by our integrators. Driving behavior itself is, I mean, physics is in the engine, but the driving behavior itself gets tuned also by our integrators. So they're taking some time from our gameplay programmers to have more time to add new features. Regarding our integration process, they are like closely combined to our sound developers. They're, for example, if we do scan the model, like because it's a necessity, we also use the audio engineers, audio designers. They also go out with our 3D scanning people, and they're like recording while, or right after or right in front, the sounds of, for example, the exhaust, the transmission, some door elements, like for example, if you close the door. And afterwards, they're like processing all these recordings at their PC in the office, and helping again the integrators in order to save some time. What you see here is what I know the best is the quality assurance. So again, include the QA early in the production process, so you're having players afterwards that like your features and that the features are, for example, fun. our QA uses different testing approaches and testing plans. For example, you see one here. This is like our master testing plan. So you can select different tests that you run on them and you don't forget them. For example, we have a sandbox game. And if you just test one machine, you maybe, because you're into this routine, you forget something. It's possible. And therefore, even these small Excel sheets can help. And if you find something new, you can add it. You can talk about it to your QA lead. It can be updated and so on. For example, and it's because it's like the sandbox game, it's very important even to test it in multiplayer, since there are like a lot of problems that could appear. There's an example. We had in FS22, the latest version, we had the issue that once you bought a tractor, that if it needed to get maintained afterwards, the repair costs were much higher than the tractor itself, which is probably totally stupid. Some of you may know this one. This is our Mantis. We use it for bug tracking. What is special in our case is that we have some asset list files. You see that in the drop-down menu here, so that we can export it from our internal planner and have the same assets in have the same assets in our Mantis and our bug tracker. So for that, we can use it to sort it, to filter bugs and stuff like this. Here you see the equipment we use in our QA. So you need a lot of these in order to fill, in our case, the user's desires. So if there is, for example, a player that has a specific problem with like one of the peripherals, we, for example, buy it on eBay, get it in our QA, and then they're like testing it and even creating a new input binding for that. So with the next update, it should be supported. From talking about the departments, we have a quick look at crossplay and how it affected our production pipeline. So it was important for us to have crossplay in our latest game, because this game is not a first-person shooter. It's more or less made for it, because you can play it with a console, you can play it, with a gamepad, you can play it with a keyboard, and it's very easy to handle. So you don't have any advantages or disadvantages using different input methods. So what problems did we have? There were like PlayStation and Sony and Microsoft. They didn't allow to directly connect to their consoles, more or less. So I come to the solutions later. On each platform, we used a different voice protocol before, because it was more or less given by their console itself. We didn't have any voice chat on PC. We used external programs, which wasn't possible on, for example, console. What we need to know was to handle the ownership of the DLCs in multiplayer. So what if only one person owns a DLC? Can everybody connect? Or who can use vehicles from it, etc. Then on the other hand, how do we handle the platform-exclusive DLCs? Some of the console manufacturers, they want like exclusive products in order that they use in order to have it advertised in their shop. Or how do we update all the platforms at the same time, like with the same version? Our solutions. So we used different relay servers that are worldwide. And so every console is able to connect there, and then it gets forwarded more or less to the other participant. which helps us to not directly connect to each of the consoles. We switched to the Opus Voice audio codec, and since it's royalty-free and open source, so it was a perfect fit for our engine we were talking about. So it's not that we're waiting for others and taking care of what they're doing. For patches themselves, so once we release a build, we use, if you want to know, SVN Tortoise for our development, and we're having a revision. We know that, for example, it takes the longest to having a build looked at by, I think, Sony it was. So let's say it takes 4 weeks for them to approve our build so that it gets updated. We have the same revision for Microsoft. We have the same revision for PC and so on. And so we use this as a date to these 4 weeks as a date to when is the update happening, more or less. Regarding our user-generated content, or even the DLCs, we added a feature that would allow the host of a game to enable or disable the content based on its ownership. So if the host, for example, owns a DLC, but the client doesn't, the content can simply, by the host, be disabled for just its session. For the platform exclusives, like the content, we just patch them into the game, more or less. And the people that were allowed to use it, more or less, they were even allowed to use it because they're in the base game. They were even allowed to use it in the game. So they were able to buy it, but the others weren't. Regarding this, we're coming to our next and last topic of this talk. It's the modding or user-generated content topic. So we support modding since 2008, which is the first year of the first release of Farming Simulator. On, I think it was FS17, we released the first mods on consoles, and already 6 years. Yeah. And I think we were the first that were allowed, or at least one of the first that were allowed to release mods on consoles. We were able to do this because we pursued more or less Microsoft and Sony, since the user-generated content was a big part of the game itself. It was like the joy bringer, more or less. So what we had to do was we created a safe space for our console partners. And this is like a single trusted site that tests all the mods that are uploaded there for compatibility of the console itself and are downloadable directly in the game. Since, yeah. This, by the way, was the front end, like the in-game ModHub, sorry. This is the back end. It's like if you are able to register yourself on our homepage, you are able to then upload any mod you'd like if you did one. And then all of the mods that are uploaded will be looked at by a team of our QA just for that. So they look at that mod submissions and they test them and then they give feedback. And you're also able to, like as the moderator, you're also able to message them if there are like some questions, like to your specific mod. Here you see a wrap up more or less of the testing process. So, and like I already said, like any user can create an account and upload it. It will be assigned to a tester, and the tester itself has to pass the mod through several stages. At first, there is like a guideline or a compliance check. So if something's in the files that is not appropriate for children, stuff like this, it will be sent back with like the info about it. And there's like a functionality check on PC afterwards. If it's okay, you can work with that modder in order to bring it to console, or if they want to, let's say. And we'd like to have them because since we're able to upload mods on consoles, we should. So once everything is fine, the mod itself will be released. So there's like problem in between. So since the beginning of the game, we had like modders uploading mods in they're creating mods in their free time, and they wanted to have a fair share of this mods. And at that time, around, I don't know, 2010 something, we had a lot of modders that were uploading it to specific hosters. So these hosters, they advertised different things, for example, pay money in order to have faster downloads and so on. And we didn't want that. So what we tried to do was having a reward program that a modder gets like a fair share out of the downloads of that specific mod. So what we added were like variables, for example, the rating by other players, dependencies of the work that were put in, etc. And so they're getting a monthly based revenue on that. If they want to like donate the money, they can select a charity. And if they do so, we're like doubling it also. Not only people want to have like a reward in the end, like some money, but people like to have something in their hands. So for them, we created like this award program. It's like a plaque you get if you reach a specific milestone. So for example, they can fill in their address afterwards, like their home address. Afterwards, they can claim their award. And for example, here, the red one is like the console version. So if you upload a console mod, you get that if you want to. And the next step will be like the bronze one for like 1 million downloads of a mod. So it's basically a way from us to say thank you for like all the hard work they put in. And we're already like close to our end. Like there's like a takeaway for you, if I'm not like explaining it good enough, so we can wrap it up. There's like, at first, what I was talking about, there's like a proof of concept, and setting a scope like is like fundamental in making sure that you can actually carry out what you plan to do and deliver. Include all the departments very early, like in all the stages throughout the development. I was talking about the QA here. And it means like you have a high quality in the end and persistent feedback and also several different perspectives. Crossplay itself is, for us, the future, like for games. And if you're afraid, don't be, like just face the new challenges and you can reap the award in the end. It's worth the trouble. So we felt firsthand, like having user-generated content and modding is like what thrives the game. You just have to reward the players, or more specific, the modders, and give them something back so you can have a great community around your game. Your player base will love it and also will grow more into a community, and the game will the brand itself. If you have questions. Thank you.
Okay, everybody, we're going to pass around the microphone, so put your hands in the air if you've got a question. We've got as much time as you need, Jan.
Thank you, Harry.
Hi, yeah. First of all, thanks very much for the talk. It's really good. I'm a big fan of Farming Simulator, so it's really nice to hear from the devs. My question, at the beginning, you talk about scope and defining it. Could you go into a little bit more detail on sort of how? Because that's, from a producer myself, it's quite it's one of the challenges we always hit, and I'm always interested in how other people do it.
I can tell you about our game in specific. So we have like the community, like I talked about, for example, the modders that are giving constantly feedback. So we're having this. Then they have desires and wishes. Like I just put it still there, like into community. Then they're like, we have partners. In our case, these are the manufacturers of, for example, the machinery. They want to have like the latest product. then you have to like talk to each other, like because they're not cool anytime. Like if there's like a machine like, oh, we don't want that, ours is better. You have to have this in there. And then there's like this scope of what feature to add. For example, the community, for example, wants dynamic ground for our game since the beginning. And then do we edit? How do we edit? And there's like, if there's not the possibility to edit to our own engine, it's mostly the crux. So that it hinders us. Yeah. I don't know. Is that everything?
Do you kind of sort of size the features and assets as well in terms of costing at that point, or is that kind of?
Yes, but that's not on me. That's a good one.
Okay.
Because this is by our higher ups. They're having their meetings, and then it comes to like the lower ones.
Yeah.
That,
when I say cost, I mean as in like dev days of cost. This tractor's going to take 2 weeks to model. These features going to take 6 months or things.
It would take 4 weeks, and then all in their minds they're like 8 weeks because something will happen.
Right.
Just use double the time. This is what I know.
Right. Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the talk. Very, very interesting. I was just wondering why you decided to write your own planning tool instead of using something off the shelf.
I think because there were like a lot of unnecessary features in the other planners, and my bosses wouldn't like to pay for all of that. Probably.
That's a good answer. Have you found any benefits from having your own tool?
More work. To be like having, you can add like a feature you like to. So, right?
So kind of customizable.
Again, like for example, like the engine, that you can add what you want, and you don't have to have other stuff you don't need. That would I say.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you very much for showing us this. So you release a title every year, plus DLCs.
A game right now?
A game every year.
3 year.
Every 3 years? Okay.
Yeah.
And so plus DLCs. How long is your typical development cycle? How long does it take you to get through all of those phases?
Depends. Right now, this, for example, the engine team is the first that it's working on like a new game. So they're more or less, once the game is released, they have to have a look at all the bugs that are coming in. We have a public bug tracker also. So if there is like a big problem, they get the information from the community, and then they're working on that. But other than that, they already have FS Next meetings then, and then they're working on the new features they want to add, for example, to the engine. And afterwards, you see, like it's ongoing. So yeah, 3 year cycle right now.
So it's a whole team working on.
But for example, for a DC, normally we don't change something on that engine.
Okay.
Hey, so making your own custom engine, I mean, that's always super interesting. But then I was wondering, do you have your own level editor and script editor, or do you just use something off the shelf?
Oh, yeah, you're right. We do have our own editor that is able to handle like maps and also like the vehicle integration. It's also done by the engine team.
Right. And then scripting, is that also just like script files somewhere written in a text editor, or is there something you've made for that?
Yeah, not in that. We do have scripts in that editor for specific like testing. If you're, for example, creating a map that you can check something, or that you activate the physics, or that you add dirt, but
nothing on that. Okay, cool. Thank you very much.
So many questions.
Hi, I had some questions about the modding. First of all, in that picture with the who was that one with the three guys, is that you on the right?
No, thank you.
No, it kind of looks like a really young
Dutch
version of you. Okay.
Beautiful. Stein, he's called.
But I was wondering,
really?
do you have anyone in the community that's making a living just from doing mods for your game?
Eastern Europeans, mostly,
Right.
because they get a lot of share. It's the same for everyone, and regrettably, they're like the quality of life there is most of the time not that high, and they don't have to pay that much, and then they are like very happy and eager to get their money.
Hello. You mentioned about having QA involved in your white box stage like quite a bit. How do you manage whose opinions get put forward, or who actually has the deciding factor in, like, so QA thinks something, level design might think something else, an artist might think something else. Who actually is a stakeholder in that sort of decision making?
Probably the one who's the loudest. You can just give feedback, and someone has to decide, but it's probably not the QA in the end. But feedback is good. Two questions. You're getting the beacon.
Yeah, I am. I know. I'm taking all the time. Sorry. You talked about the integration team. That was quite an interesting concept that I hadn't heard of before. One element about animation. How far do they actually do the animation themselves? What sort of discipline, I suppose, is the team?
It's combined more or less where you have the gameplay programmers, and they're doing the scripts. And the integrators themselves, they're like, Yo was already asking, they're using these scripts in order, for example, they separate parts of the model, and then they're just using the scripts in order to animate it in the game. So, for example, if you press a button, this happens. Or you
I suppose it's quite procedural in terms of its mechanical.
It's done by the gameplay programmers, yes, and the integrators just use it.
And do they also do like database setup and stuff?
Yes.
The costs of the machinery and its stats and all that sort of stuff.
They do, and they are sitting right next to the programmers, so they can annoy them. Yes,
right, okay.
All the time.
Cool, thank you.
Hello. You spoke quite a lot about community feedback. How does that? What process brings it back to production from a community side?
It's a big part of the production itself, because we are, how is it called? Like if you send out, for example, an email, and they're able to give their feedback as an answer, and the community manager or managers, they're working to find like the most desired wishes in the end, and then you have a list like percentage-wise that goes to the higher ups, and they're like, yeah, here we want this feature too.
That's really cool, because you talked about an open issue database. Is there like a community facing almost bug tracker, I want to say? Did you say that the community can enter their own issues?
Probably don't get that right, but we do have a public bug tracker.
That's it. Yeah, sorry.
And you just have to register again, and then you can write like bugs.
Okay.
The QA and also the community, more the QA, is having a look and checking like the new bugs that are already like in our internal bug tracker, and like, for example, closing them, or like will be fixed in the next update, stuff like this.
Awesome. No, that's really good. That's cool.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're a drummer, right?
Thank you. Sorry, I picked a really far away corner to sit in. Hi, thank you for going through everything in your talk today. I have a question regarding your modding community. You mentioned that you have all these achievements and sort of incentives for them. What do you do to sort of engage with that community and sort of support them in their sort of creativity? Do you have any kind of events that you run with them, or like, cause you mentioned esports as well, is there like a game jam for modders, or do you provide them any guidelines or anything like that?
So if I just like talk a bit more about this, we do have this stuff also for our YouTube partners, and Twitch streamers, stuff like this. So regarding, they do get a share also if someone used their bonus code for buying our product. So on top of that, it's working like this, more or less, with the YouTubers. Is that the answer?
Is that an answer?
It's some answer.
I'll bug you later if needed. It's fine.
Okay.
Hi, I just have a question. You said that your QA team gets involved quite early in the process and spends a lot of the development time involved tightly with the development group. I'm just curious, how big is your QA group compared to the development group? Like, are we talking about the same, or talking half the size, twice the size?
We do have an internal one, and once we're going into that crunch time, like we are having external ones too. So let's say internal, we have like 10 or 15, 10, I think it's 10, 12 people that really get to know a lot of agricultural machinery in their life, and also people that just came with no information about machinery at all. So they are just gamers. So, and if you combine both of these like mindsets, they're like working really well together.
Okay, I'm guessing compared to the development team, that is quite a bit smaller.
It is. Where our company itself only has 100 persons working on a title, like in a whole.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, that's all. Thank you very much. Oh, going back.
Just the last question. So obviously with the updates and stuff, you have to synchronize that across different platforms. So so if one of them come back and say this build isn't good, or this needs to be edited, how does that affect the overall kind of production pipeline and kind of all the updates and all these marketing dates that everyone's set for that update?
It will be fixed in a branch of that said revision, and then it will be like all the new builds will be done, redone. So what I didn't have in that talk, I'm sorry, it's like we also have like not only the planner, we do have like this auto builder. So when as I was going home as a QA lead back in the days, I was able to just like click on like this revision, please create this build, and then the builds would have been fine and uploaded to like the external QAs, etc., on the next day. So when I'm coming again into the office, everything is done. So it's like, so for us, like creating builds is not hard. And if there's only like one problem, one bug, we can fix it right away, more or less. Okay. Thanks. Thank you very much. And if you want to be the 101, feel free. Thank you.